All right, good evening and welcome, everybody. Somebody's got on something. If we could turn it down as far as the feedback, please. Everything off? Okay. It's part of the process. We'll be fine.
Just getting a bunch of distortion on the audio right now.
Should be good. Good evening, everybody. Thank you, everybody, for your patience. It is 6:40, and I'm calling this meeting of the Common Council of the City of Wausau on Tuesday, March 24, 2020, to order. Before we get started, I do have one small little message. First off, I'll announce everybody that is here in person. It would be Mr. Gisselman, it would be Mr. Nutting, Mr. Smith, and Ms. Lawrence from the council. We also have several staff members on board as well. For those that are participating by teleconference, it would be Ms. Tao, Ms. McElhaney, Mrs. Tao, excuse me, Ms. McElhaney, Mrs. Rasmussen, Mr. Neal, Mr. Martins, Mr. Peckham, and Ms. Herbst. Good evening, and due to the COVID-19 pandemic situation and all that has been associated with it over the past 10 days, tonight's council meeting is really an unprecedented and extraordinary type of meeting being held tonight for the very first time ever. I ask that everyone has patience, be calm, and be respectful, because this is the first time that teleconferencing has been ever attempted in such a local city government meeting setting, and there's bound to be some issues, as we've seen at the beginning, regarding technology or just trying to make sure that we're doing everything that we are supposed to be doing normally in a regular meeting setting. Almost everything I'm about to mention can be located at the bottom of the tonight's City Council meeting agenda. Members of the media and the public may attend either in person, or residents can call in by dialing 1-408-418-9388. Again, 1-408-418-9388 at the beginning of the meeting to address an issue that is on tonight's agenda. The access code to participate via phone is 625-452-108. Again, the password, access code, 625-452-108. In trying to make sure that there is continued openness and transparency for the public to watch and to hear what is happening, as it has been for almost the past 4 years, the public can watch live on our public access channel number 981, which is broadcast all standing committee or council meetings in the future and will continue to do so, or to watch the video of tonight's meeting in its entirety and can be accessed at https://tinyurl.com/Wausau City Council. I ask that all public phones be muted during the meeting. For those members of the public that are in attendance in the council chambers tonight, you will need to adhere to the 6 feet rule of social distance between one another, and this has been measured and cornered off here in the council chambers to enforce that distance. And I would like to thank both Christian Sorensen and Jerry Klein from IT for putting this together as quickly as they did, not only for this meeting, but so many others, so that the public can be informed. Okay, let's get started. We'll start tonight's proceedings with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I'm going to do a roll call. Please indicate your presence. Mr. Peckham.
Here.
Mr. Martins.
Here.
Mr. Nutting.
Here.
Mr. Neal.
Here.
Mr. Gisselman. Here. Ms. McElhaney.
Here.
Ms. Rasmussen.
Here.
Ms. Lawrence. Here. Ms. Herbst.
Here.
Ms. Thau. Mr. Smith.
Towel.
All right then, we have those folks here. Before we get to the consent agenda, it has been requested for two items to be pulled to be moved to the resolutions and ordinances. These would be file 20-0315 from the Economic Development Committee, and that's been requested by Mrs. Tao. And then is file number 03-1007 from the Finance Committee, a request to be moved by Mr. Smith. In the meantime, for the rest of the consent agenda, starting with file number 20-0301 from the City Council, the minutes of the previous regular meeting of March 10th of this year, and ending with file number 20-0312 from SISM, an ordinance designating odd even parking on North 10th Avenue between West Wausau Avenue and West Knox Street. Oh, okay, I see that. My apologies. Go ahead, Mrs. Lawrence.
I can't remember who I requested this of, but I was contacted by a resident after the CISM meeting who was unable to get to that meeting, and he asked if I would please have that sent back to committee. He had some additional insight in terms of why he opposes changing it. So I would ask that that be put down under resolutions and ordinances.
Okay, we can move that one then.
Thank you.
So then, going back to file number 20-0301, the minutes of the previous meeting, and now ending with file number 20-0309 from SISM, Capital Improvements and Street Maintenance, a resolution accepting easement with Wisconsin Public Service for grading and creating a ditch at parcel ID number 076-2907-282-0967. Entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda. Motion by Mr. Nutting, second by Mr. Gisselman.
We will now call the roll. Mr. Peckham?
Aye.
Mr. Martins?
Aye.
Mr. Nutting?
Aye.
Mr. Neal?
Aye.
Mr. Gieselman? Ms. McElhaney?
Aye.
Ms. Rasmussen?
Aye.
Ms. Lawrence? Ms. Herbst?
Aye.
Ms. Tao?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Moving on to the resolutions and ordinances, and we have three of them that have been asked to be moved. I'll start with the last one that have been requested by Ms. Lawrence for file number 20-0312 from the Capital Improvements and Street Maintenance Committee, an ordinance designating odd even parking on North 10th Avenue between West Wausau Avenue and West Knox Street, Monday through Friday, 7:30 a.m. to 3:30 p.m., no parking on West Wausau Avenue between North 9th Avenue and North 10th Avenue, and on West Union Avenue between North 9th Avenue and North 10th Avenue, Monday through Friday, 7:30 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. Again, Ms. Lawrence requested this to be pulled, and she'd like to explain. Go ahead.
Well, I just moved to, is it?
Oh, I'm sorry, I need a motion.
Is it a table, Ann? Is it, or a motion to send back, refer back to committee? I'll move to send, refer it back to committee.
Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Nutting.
I will now call the roll.
Go ahead,
Can
Mr.
What are we
Gisselman.
voting on here?
As far as we move back, file number 20-0312, this was just announced here at the meeting to be asked to be pulled. So, as far as to table it and have further discussion for it, either with the CISM and with the council in the future.
I had asked that it be pulled from the consent agenda, but was told that the objecting party had to appear tonight to ask for it, that I couldn't, which I didn't understand, but he can't be here.
There was some
Anyway,
reason, evidently, some constituent wanted to speak to this.
yes, one particular constituent who works 311, who couldn't make it to CISM, had asked that this change be made. Actually, the 10th Avenue is now posted, no parking between between certain parts on the block during school hours. And she asked to have that removed or changed, and we found that there was nothing in the ordinance about that. The signs had just been put up years ago. So we debated that at committee. She has special vans and things that come to support a disabled person, her daughter who lives in the home, and she felt it was a hardship with the existing parking. So this is what the committee opposed. Again, another neighbor had called me who was panicking. He hadn't been able to be at the meeting and didn't think it would be that fast, and he would like an opportunity to appear before CISM to kind of refute some of the benefits of changing it. I don't know how else to say it. So we're giving him a chance to speak.
the benefits of changing it to where.
To
where-
this. He feels that the neighbors like it this way, and through inertia, nobody showed up, and she couldn't show up. He feels she has plenty of parking in her driveway now, and he pointed out certain, I'll just say, all-night parking abuses that she and some of her family members have engaged in the past when it's, kind of a snow emergency. So he was kind of in shock that we were going to allow this for someone who already, kind of abuses city parking on 10th Avenue.
Will they be able to be at the next, or whenever this does show up? I'm not sure when. but-
Yes, well, I hope so. I can't drag him there, but he's certainly going to be notified of the committee time.
I have a motion and a second.
Mayor, can I just,
Mrs. Tao, go ahead.
can I just share?
Go ahead, please.
Sorry, I hear feedback
Oh,
coming.
I'm sorry.
so
Go ahead,
If I sound
please.
weird, please let me know.
No, you're fine.
Okay, when we considered this in CISM, we really didn't say that we were making these changes or accepting some of these changes based on accommodating just that one resident who had asked about, off-street parking. We really had someone from transit that was in the audience who addressed some of our questions and concerns. We had, others on the committee who talked about the unclear signs that we have there today and addressing the ordinances for parking during those durations of school hours. And I think that what we're proposing here today isn't just to accommodate that one resident, but to fix the items that didn't have clarity on the books. And maybe others that are a part of CISM can contribute in addition to what I just shared.
Mr. Gisselman?
And then in addition, I think that we did have people from the police department, traffic, from Public Works. I think that this was pretty well vetted at that CISM meeting. As you can recall, I think that this is pretty much the consensus. And I think Mary would be agreeing that this was sort of the consensus that was coming out of that fairly lengthy discussion at CISM. So I think that it was, after some discussion, from a variety of inputs, I think we came to this conclusion.
Ms. Lawrence?
And thank you. In my opinion, the staff people who were there from transit and police, and knowing the liaison officer's opinion, would like to see no parking on either side of 10th Avenue, all the time. It's easier for the buses in the winter and all of that. And the liaison officer had some reasons that were conveyed to me prior to that meeting, that he just, thinks it's better control of his relationship with students and their activities. So this even odd parking with signing it properly for school hours was a compromise. I'm not sure that, Peter from Transit said, yeah, I can live with that, and the police kind of shrugged, okay, but my sense was they would like to keep it no parking. If we vote on it tonight, I'm not going to cry, but I'm just telling you I was asked to have it tabled.
Mrs. Rasmussen?
Referred back.
Okay. Mrs. Tao, was there anything else, or?
No, that's all from me.
Okay, then Mrs. Rasmussen is asked to speak.
Thank you. Also, as a CISM committee member, we worked hard to find a compromise on this one that worked for everyone. It wasn't a singular decision for one house. I'm always reluctant to take stuff back in committee if we don't believe that the outcome will be any different. If we will go back and have the exact same discussion again and come back to council with no changes, there's really no point to take it back to committee. So my recommendation would be that we either decide tonight or table the item to, a specific point in time where we can give a date where the item would reappear on the council agenda without going back through committee. And if the resident wants to attend at that point, there'd be time for him to plan for it. But if we're not going to come out with a different decision out of the committee, I'm reluctant to take it back in committee.
Would anybody else like to speak on this matter? Okay, I do have a motion and a second.
I will now call the roll. Peckham,
Aye.
Martins,
Aye.
Nutting,
Aye.
Neal,
Is this a,
You're now voting on the motion to refer it back to committee.
To refer it back to
Okay,
committee, I'm
that's
sorry, I should have
So,
been more specific.
Yeah, refresh everybody's memory, if you would, please, Leslie, on who the motion and the second came from and what the motion is.
Mr. Nutting and first Ms. Lawrence and Mr. Nutting.
Ms. Lawrence made the first and Mr. Nutting second.
Right. And the others, the first three have voted aye. This is to, the motion is to send it back to the committee. I'm voting nay.
and can you clarify, and have we called a roll call vote again? Yeah.
Would I need to make a motion to make another roll call vote on this matter, since people didn't seem to be sure as far as what they were voting for?
Yeah, were people unsure about what they were voting upon? Did they think they were voting yea or nay to approve the resolution as written?
Yes, that's what I
Yes.
thought.
Okay, then I think we will, at Mrs. Tow's request and my recommendation, recall that. What you're voting on, the motion by Lawrence and the second by Nutting, is to refer this resolution or this ordinance change back to SISM. So if you don't want it referred back, you would vote nay.
Start over.
Okay, I will start from the beginning again. Peckham,
I'm going to say nay, and will suggest that we then take up the matter of just putting it on the next council agenda, like Ms. Rasmussen suggested. So nay for me.
Martins,
Nay.
Nutting,
Nay.
Neal,
Nay.
Gieselman,
No,
McElhaney,
No.
Rasmussen,
No.
Lawrence. Herbst,
Nay.
Tao,
No.
Smith.
Yes,
Motion fails, 2-9.
Okay, for the next request by Mrs. Towle for file number 20-0315 for economic development, a resolution authorizing the mayor to approve payment deferrals on existing city-provided
Yeah,
loans.
excuse me, Mayor, are you not going to vote on the ordinance then, since it's not referred back? It's
My
back
bad.
before the council. I'm sorry to interrupt.
That's okay, I'm glad that you did. Like I said, it's a little different tonight. Go ahead.
Okay, so I'm going to call the roll.
I think you need another motion to approve the ordinance as written.
Can we get a motion to approve the ordinance as it is written, please? Motion by Mr. Gisselman, second by Mr. Nutting. Thank you.
Now I will call the roll. Peckham,
No.
Martins,
Aye.
Nutting,
Aye.
Neal,
Aye.
Gieselman,
aye.
McElhaney,
Yes.
Rasmussen,
Aye.
Lawrence. Herbst,
Aye.
Tao,
Yes.
Smith.
yes,
Motion passes 10-1.
Okay, now we'll move on. Thank you for your patience. File number 20-0315 from the Economic Development Committee, a resolution authorizing the mayor to approve payment deferrals on existing city-provided loans to commercial properties and businesses for up to 1 year to assist small businesses during the COVID-19 pandemic. Go ahead, Mrs. Towle. I gotta make a
Do you
motion.
need a first?
I was about to say, I need a
First, sir.
motion. Motion by Mr. Gisselman. Do I have a second? By Mr. Nutting. I was about to say, we can have discussion, sure. We got to take a vote?
Mayor?
Go ahead.
Are you ready?
I'm ready, go ahead, yes.
Okay. Okay, well, first of all, thank you to the Economic Development Committee. You know, these are very sensitive times to some of our smallest of our small businesses with the healthcare crisis that we have, you know, impacting our lives and our economy today. As I take a look at this resolution, and I did some research on what WEDC and SBA are providing as far as economic relief or any kind of stimulus to small businesses, they have guidelines that really help small businesses navigate some of their grants or some of their low interest federal disaster loans or working capital for small businesses that are suffering from this economic injury of the COVID-19 situation today. And as I take a look at our resolution, I would like for us to consider adding some guidelines, such as some of the guidelines that WEDC and SBA has put in place. Because when I take a look at the resolution, and if you give me a second, I'm managing my screens here. When I take a look at below in the resolution, where we say, be it resolved, and you look at the second sentence or the second line, and it talks to payment deferrals for any city-funded loan to commercial properties and small businesses on a case-by-case basis up to 1 year. I think we're missing some criteria here. And I want the council to really consider some of the guidelines that WEDC and SBA are using, such as examples of, you know, criteria where businesses have less than 20 employees, their annual generated revenue is up to and below $2 million. So those are some things that I want us to think about that's missing from the resolution. And to have it be left as on a case-by-case basis, I think we really open up, you know, the gap financing that we provided for some of the businesses in our area. I think it just opens it up to maybe greater than, you know, what we're trying to fulfill as a mission to some of these vulnerable small businesses.
In bringing this up as far as for council consideration, et cetera, you know, this is something, a different time. We've never been through something like this before, and I want to try to protect those small businesses for up to 1 year, nothing more, as a case-by-case basis, because we have no idea what's going to be happening here in the next 4 to 5 months. Could be 2 months, it could be 3 months, it could be whatever. And I can understand where some of those businesses with loans and everything, they're concerned. I would never want to let it go past anything longer than a year or anything like that. I want to make sure the businesses are taken care of in this time, and it's not one more thing that they have to worry about. That's the reason why this was brought forward. But I'm amiable as far as different things that you've suggested. Mrs. Rasmussen.
Go ahead, Lisa.
Thank you. Okay, so I agree with Mary that we probably need to look at some criteria to make sure that we're treating them fairly first. I mean, just as an example, you could get 8 requests for deferrals, and if you consider them case by case, I think it's easy to get subjective in the approval. So if we had defined criteria for, you know, demonstrative impact in either revenue or workforce reduction brought on by the COVID-19 crisis, something that we could score these against. And it's fine if they're scored in-house, if they're scored by staff, they don't have to have committee action. But if we had a consistent set of criteria that leads you to that yes or no decision, and then would require some evidence of the loss. You know, if a company comes in and says, well, I just lost money, well, okay, but as a direct result, did you lay off workforce? Did you shut the door for 6 months? I mean, that's what we need to know, I think, on our end. Originally, I planned to amend this to also include ground lease payments, because that is also a real expense that businesses face. But, and I will offer the amendment to include ground leases in this, but I would like to see us adopt some criteria. And if that is the criteria used by WEDC, that would bring some consistency as well.
Mr. Neal?
Thanks. I took my hand down because I was going to also request the ground lease be added to that resolution. So, Alder Rasmussen, beat me to the punch on it.
Okay. Mrs. Tao, was there anything else?
Yeah, I just want one more consideration. And I love to hear from the Economic Development Committee. Why not defer the loan interest as well too? I mean, I understand, you know, I've had student loans before, I've filed forbearance before, interest still accrues, but principal payments are pushed to a later time. If we truly value small businesses
It went back up.
in our Wausau economy here, why not do it all?
And we do have Chris Schock with us. Chris, are you there?
Yes, of course. Yep. And we're glad to answer questions. You know, again, this, I think one of the differences is some of the parameters that the WEDC and these other organizations are doing is they're creating new terms for new lending. You know, what we're talking about today is deferring payments on existing loans. We're not talking about new lending requirements. And we already defer payments on loans on a case-by-case basis for some of the different programs that don't require council action. So for example, commercial rehab loans are already, there's already a process for staff to review the loan with the primary lender and, you know, allow deferment of payments or deferral of payments. That would be interest and principal during that time, although the interest would continue to accrue to allow them to either seek refinancing, seek restructuring, do a variety of things in normal times, in normal situations. Well, why the mayor has brought this, you know, potentially forward now is we do have some loans which are funded with TIF resources, and that is a statutory pot of money. You know, it's not administered, you know, at the staff level or a separate pot of money. And so, you know, those kind of loans need to be, you know, would normally, a change to that kind of loan would need to go through an amendment, basically, a development agreement amendment, you know, which would go through the process of, you know, committees and council. And so we're presenting this as an opportunity to defer those payments, principal and interest again, during the, you know, during this window of time, up to a year. And I think there is merit to having some flexibility in the sense of, you know, phrasing it on a case-by-case basis so that we can work with the primary lender. You know, keep in mind, we're always, you know, a secondary party at the table with any of the projects that we participate on, and the primary lender, you know, may require or need certain changes or certain, you know, certain ways that they'd like to see it structured to make the deal work. And so that's one reason why we've, you know, kind of phrased it in this way. So we do want to clarify, it's not new money, it's not new loans that would be, you know, then targeted towards certain businesses. There are funds to do new loans, and that is, the SBA has those funds, and McDevco is working to put together a pot of money for that as well, which could be new loans on top of things. But we recommend, from a staff perspective, that existing loans, and as Lisa and Tom both noted, ground lease payments, could be deferred, up to a year. And the impact of that is not necessarily a lot for the city. A lot of these loans, again, would continue to accrue interest and just drag out the payment schedule. But it would obviously be very meaningful to businesses for cash flow at this time.
Ms.
Chris,
Jacobson?
I still didn't get my question answered, and it wasn't directly towards you, but why
Sure, go
couldn't
ahead.
we defer the interest and the payments for a year and not let the interest accrue?
I mean, you can change it as you wish. Our recommendation and our discussion with the ED committee was to defer, payments. It would continue to accrue. When you talk about forgiving interest, then that does have a fiscal impact. We'd have to go calculate that on every loan, I guess, if you want to consider that from a fiscal impact perspective, and then understand it. I think, what this does as an initial step, given the gravity of the crisis, is to, kind of take the pressure off of small businesses to make their payments, allow the deferral, and, they may very well need to come back to the city with a change in terms or some kind of restructuring of their debt in the future. And we'll have to review that on, that'll have to go through a process, right? That'll have to go through the council because you'll want to weigh the, kind of fiscal impacts of what that means to forgive interest for, such amount of time. Some of the loans are at different rates depending on what was negotiated. So, there's going to be, it's perhaps much more complicated than a simple deferral.
Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Jacobson?
I just noticed something I'm going to recommend somebody add. It's in the heading of the resolution, but it's not in the be it resolved portion. And in looking at the language, it authorizes the mayor to authorize deferrals of payments for up to 1 year, but it doesn't say for what period. It does up above say just during the pandemic or during the governor's emergency declaration. So both to Mary's point and what Chris just explained to her, and for more clarity as to the period for which the mayor has given this authorization, I would ask any council member that's interested or recommend to them that if they want to make any changes to that, they can certainly make motions to amend the be it resolved portion to limit that authority during the pandemic period and further define payments, whether that's interest and principal, or, like Chris said, anybody's welcome to make any amendments to that be it resolved paragraph that they wish.
Ms.
Thank you.
Lawrence?
Thank you. I agree with the resolution in spirit, but I'm concerned about the lack of criteria, as Alder Tao said. I would like to see that more specific. And I'm also concerned, especially with an election coming, that this is going on the shoulders of one person, the mayor. And I just am uncomfortable with the possibility that if there are multiple requests and on a case-by-case basis, they're not all approved for some reason, in the absence of criteria, someone might come back and, file a suit against the city that they weren't treated equally. I don't know. But I think adding some criteria to this would help. And I would like to see, like the mayor, finance director, and finance chairman or something to flesh that out a little bit, so it almost functions like the Board of Public Works, where there's an odd number of people reviewing it.
That would be fine.
Is that a motion to amend the resolution?
Well, okay,
I do have one more person that
Okay,
wants
sure.
to speak. So Mrs. Rasmussen?
Okay, so hearing everything that was said, I like the idea of the Board of Public Works, and I don't know if this is what, I think we could delegate something like this to the Board of Public Works as purview. Part of the reason we have them reviewing proposals and things is because it takes the politics out of it, but operations and finance experts look at these things. So if we wanted to not put all of this on the shoulders of the mayor, like Linda said, we could delegate that responsibility. Board of Public Works meets a couple times a month anyway. Would it be possible for us to assign that review and that approval to the Board of Public Works? And then I'll have a follow-up if that's possible, Ann.
Is that okay?
Maybe Mary Ann would chime in, but I don't see why it couldn't be.
No, I think that would work out. I mean, the Director of Public Works isn't typically going to be intimately involved in these things, but it would be transparent. And, you know, the Director of Community Development could still participate in the meeting. I don't know, Ann, what you think.
Legally,
Well, as
can
a
we do
member
it?
of the Board of Public Works, I'm legally, to the mayor's question, I mean, certainly the council can take whatever action they want. They can delegate whatever authority they want upon a motion and a second and a pass. As a member of the Board of Public Works, I don't feel qualified or comfortable implementing this or administering it without putting a limit on that authority and providing some objective criteria by which to pass on these myself.
So as a follow-up, I would offer the demonstrable criteria to be that we would consider or let the Board of, or ask the Board of Public Works to consider deferral of payments and interest not to exceed 1 year based on direct economic impact sustained by the loan holder as a result of the COVID-19 crisis and not for any other circumstance. That said, we would ask that business show demonstrable loss, either through either supply chain shortages, staffing reduction, or substantial reduction in their revenue stream, either through closure or through an inability to operate based on government shutdown. And so if they can demonstrate that those things have happened, they've been closed by the government, they've had to lay off workers, their supply chain has been disrupted, they've been unable to function normally, and they can show us, you know, proof of such, that I think, because we're also working with primary lenders, should be proof enough. And you'd have that criteria in place where you could then offer that deferral.
Mr. Peckham?
Yeah, I've had my hand up. Apparently that little device doesn't work.
My apologies. Remember, this is the first time we're doing this, so
Okay,
patience.
Anyway, I think this is a very good effort and our intent is very good here. There have been some good suggestions made on how it could be improved, and I think the best thing would be to do, toss it back to economic development, let them chew on it, bring it back.
So in other words, you're offering to table this and bring it back to economic development, or? All right.
Back to
Excuse me.
economic development, have them bring it back as soon as possible.
Okay,
Is that a motion to refer
I was
back
about
to
to s-
economic development, Mr. Peckham?
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
do I have a second? By Ms. Lawrence?
Okay, I will now call the roll. Peckham,
Aye.
Martins,
Aye.
Nutting,
Aye.
Neal,
Mr. Neal?
Aye.
Gieselman,
Aye.
McElhaney,
The sound goes in and out. Is a motion. I would ask the clerk before you do a motion, if you could please restate the motion since there's a number of amendments coming up. us remotely I'm having a lot of feedback and I'm missing out on a lot. Is this a motion to table and send back to ED?
Not to table.
Not to table, but to bring it back to the Economic Development Committee for clarification.
Okay, all right, then I will vote aye.
Okay, thank you.
Rasmussen?
Aye.
Lawrence? Herbst?
Aye.
Tao?
Yes.
Smith? Motion passes unanimously.
Moving on to file number 03-1007 for the Finance Resolution approving the 2020 Community Development Block Grant Program Action Plan and the Community Development Block Grant Program 5-year consolidated plan. This is a request by Mr. Smith. I know we have several individuals here ready to speak on that. And I'll take a motion to accept discussion for this. Motion by Mr. Gisselman. Do I have a second?
Peckham.
By Mr. Peckham, thank you. Okay, we'll open it up for discussion. Go ahead, sir. Mr. Smith? Your microphone's off, Dennis.
Looking at the disbursements here, I see that the Bridge Community Gardens originally requested $74,110. The city, I don't know who the city advocate recommended is, if that's the board or who, recommended $40,000. And then if the finance, I don't know if that's the finance committee or another committee. Is that the finance committee that works on that?
And Michelle, if you could give your name and address for the record, please. You too, Mr. Brilken.
Michelle Van Cray, 2413 Oakwood Boulevard. I'm the Community Development Specialist. And this is Bruce. Want to give your
Bruce
address?
Bolkin, 409 Ross Avenue, Wausau.
So the changes in the allocation come from the change in our actual allocation versus what we had thought we were going to get. So initially, Bridge requested that $74,000, and the Citizens Advisory Committee recommended to fund them at $40,000 based on our estimate that we would receive $580,000. But our allocation actually came in at over $630,000, which is great. So we were able to give more money to Bridge Community Clinic for the garden project.
Okay, so, but the finance committee, that's not our finance committee, that's your internal finance committee?
So I brought these recommendations to the last Finance Committee meeting. Those recommendations are the ones that were changed after the allocation came in higher, and then the Finance Committee voted to move those forward.
Okay, what I'm trying to establish is who is the finance committee? Is it the committee, is it a council committee, or is it a committee within your organization?
It is the Finance Committee of the council that you're a member
Okay,
of.
all right. So here we go. The citizens recommended 40. The finance committee, in their unending largesse, decided to give them 57.
Well,
My question is this. Looking at the justification for this, it says that these people will serve 20 to 40 persons annually and their related households. Okay? The Open Door Committee, which got ZIP, would serve over 100 people and has the ability to work with one-on-one with people concerning resources and healthcare. It appears to me that we could take 17,000 from, or 15,000 from the garden and give it to the Open Door, and they would still get 2,000 more than the citizens recommended. So I guess I'm questioning why that didn't happen.
Yeah, I can answer those questions. So Open Door actually didn't submit their application in time, so that disqualified them from the process. Unfortunately, we weren't able to fund them this year. And with Public Services, which if you look at the chart is everything in gray, we are only allowed to fund 15% of what we receive as our allocation. So there is some math involved in that. So that is one of the reasons why Open Door wasn't funded this year.
Okay, so am I assuming that the other outfits that didn't receive any money were also late?
No, no one else was late except for Open Door. The rest of them didn't receive funding based on recommendation from our Citizens Advisory Committee.
Okay. Just seems like $57,000, a lot of money to grow carrots.
I think they're growing more than carrots.
Well, to grow produce. Let's open it up to the field and just say produce. That seems like a lot of money.
Yeah, the Bridge Community Clinic project has a lot of benefits besides just growing money. It allows low-income individuals to have a resource to grow food to support their families, as well there's many health benefits to gardening, which is why Bridge Community has that program.
There's many health benefits simply walking around the block. It don't cost $57,000. So, okay, yeah, all right, that explains it. Thank you very much.
Miss McElhaney, did you
Hi,
wish to
thanks.
speak?
Yes, I did. Dennis asked the question because I was wondering why some of these are zero, but some, because we got more, they included more. I have a question about Marathon Parks Department. What all programs got more because we had got an increase in our allotment?
Yes, so if you look at the chart provided, the administration portion got an increase. We're allowed to fund that at 20% of our allocations, so we funded that to the full 20%. And then the Parks Department got an increase, and Bridge Community Clinic got an increase.
I don't have a chart in front of in my pen, so, okay. What about the Hmong American Center youth programs? Why was that, not funded at all?
During the process that the Citizens Advisory Committee goes through to decide that, some concerns were brought up about the organizational nature of the programs and of their counts or their committee or board, whoever runs them. And so it was decided to not fund them this year, to give them the opportunity to kind of reorganize and reapply next year.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anybody else? Mrs. Rasmussen?
Thank you. With regard to the Citizens Advisory Committee that does the allocations for block grants, my recommendation always has been that we make every effort to follow the block grant committee's recommendation, because the process they go through is painstaking and it's credible. And we really have few processes for allocation of federal funds that are better than this one, because we have a independent citizen panel that works to balance the money they get, which seems like it's never enough lately, with the needs of the community. And they also try to eliminate entities relying on that funding forever. They go out and they look for new things to fund. Once they get a project up and running, the likelihood that that project would perpetually be able to keep coming back to the trough for the same funds is waning, because they want them to become self-sufficient so they can go out and start to allocate to other things that have value in the community. So I value the citizen process that we engage for this, and I think that we should follow their allocations, because they have delved into the proposals and the requests way more in depth than we have as a council. And so for us to try to rebalance that effort on the council floor, I don't think we could do it justice. Thank you.
Mrs. Tao?
Can you hear me?
Go ahead.
Okay. I just want to follow up to Ms. McElhaney's question about the Hmong American Center. I actually reached out to the Hmong American Center, and they shared that the feedback they were given was that they were funded prior years consecutively, and that they were encouraged to reapply next year, and that was the reason. I didn't hear that there were some concerns about their youth program or their board. So can you go into a little bit more detail for me about that?
So Tammy Stratz is the one who had the conversation with the director of the Hmong American Center. Unfortunately, she can't be here due to medical reasons. I'm not sure what was communicated to him in that meeting, but if you go back and look at the minutes from our Citizens Advisory Committee where we discussed that, it was brought up that there were some concerns on that regard from several committee members.
Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead, Mr. Peckham.
Yeah, thank you. I am the council's representative on that body, and I want to echo what Ms. Rasmussen said about the deliberations that go into these decisions. And I think what's starting to come out here is that if you look at that chart, people asking for $25,000 and getting zip, and then somebody asking for, different number, and it's hard to follow, but it is very complicated. It goes into the quality of the perceived management of an organization, what their financial plan looks like, how many years they've received funds in the past, and all those things are taken into consideration. And the chair, Bruce Bolkin, allows a full conversation and examination of all those requests. Pretty good package. I think we should approve it.
Ms. Lawrence?
I have a question. On the note on the bottom of the chart, public service funding cannot exceed 15% of grant amount, which is $94,758. I assume that's what was awarded by HUD of the 631 something. And then the note on the bottom, PS left to fund, what did that mean? 7758? Right, but left to fund, I mean, there's more than that left unfunded. What does that mean?
So the PS left to fund would be the remaining amount. So the 15% is what we can fund. What we funded, subtracted from that 15%, is what we have left to fund. When the advisory committee funded it, they funded the public service at full 15% based on our estimated allocation, which was 580. Our actual allocation was 630, so that left a new 15% of 630 that we did not put into public service.
So the public service I added came to 87,000. It could have been 94,758, so that's the difference.
Yes, correct,
Okay.
with the new allocation,
Okay,
or the
thank-
actual allocation.
Okay, we do have was there any other conversation or discussion needed by anybody? Okay, I do have a motion and a second for this to be moved forward. And we don't,
Okay, I will call the roll. Peckham,
Aye.
Martins,
Aye.
Nutting,
Mr. Nutting had to leave.
Neal,
Aye.
Gieselman,
Aye.
McElhaney,
Aye.
Rasmussen,
Aye.
Lawrence, Herbst,
Aye.
Tao,
Yes.
Smith.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Moving on to resolutions and ordinances, starting with file number 200303. Mayor's appointments, there's none this month or this week. File number 19-1109 from the Finance Committee, a resolution approving the 2020 budget modification for special event staffing for the Wausau Police Department. My apologies. Do you have a copy of it? Committee action approved 5-0. The fiscal impact is not to exceed $135,000. I'll entertain a motion to accept.
Move to approve.
Motion by Mr. Neal. Do I have a second by Ms. Lawrence? Any further discussion? Mr. Smith?
Thank you. Question on this, these are for private events. Is there any way that the city could bill the people holding these events for the additional police coverage? That's done in a lot of communities. Maybe somebody from the police department could chime in.
There's no one here.
Mr. Bliven? There you go.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I mean, so that was a topic of discussion at the Finance Committee. That is an option that, the council could make a decision that we want to, ask the people putting on this event to pay for that staffing, and that's certainly an option for the city council. I think that part of the discussion at Finance was that, we don't want to discourage people from having these events inside the city, but we want to make sure that they're adequately staffed, so we were looking at funding it through city dollars.
Well, my concern is I doubt very much that it would kill a lot of the events. Can't see them canceling everything on the 400 block because they might have to pay for security. I know my wife is involved with the Art in the Park. They pay rent-a-cops to do their security inside. I'm wondering why some of these other organizations don't. But then again, if they know the city's going to pick up the tab, what's their incentive to do that?
Ms.
Yeah,
Mack,
well, I mean, I
go
think
ahead.
there's a big difference between, what you refer to as rent-a-cops and, and then our CSOs and our sworn law enforcement. So if you look at federal standards, the deputy chief has done a lot of research into federal standards for how many law enforcement officers per thousand at a crowd. Even at the numbers that we've recommended, we're quite a bit lower than what those recommendations and standards are. We think it's adequate for our community. We have had discussions with Wausau area events and, regarding some of the events that they put on and what impact this request to pay for law enforcement at their events would have on there, and it would be pretty difficult for them to overcome in terms of funding those resources.
Ms. Lawrence?
Thank you. The members of the Finance Committee, when we talked about this, we're sensitive to what Dennis is saying, and I especially asked the police chief to work with the Fair Board for future years, because that one sticks in my craw that they don't contribute anything, and I think years ago they used to, I don't know. But in general, most of the organizations get money from room tax anyway, so it'd be almost like paying ourselves. So we looked for, starting in the 2021 budget, that we would revamp some of the room tax money to cover this, because it's related to events, as opposed to coming out of the general fund. So we agreed with you, but didn't have any other choice today for this summer.
Mr. Neal?
Thank you. Yeah, I support this from a couple of different directions. First of all, it is a public safety issue, and it's good to have that enhanced presence there to make sure everything goes smoothly. But, anybody who's trying to put on an event will tell you that money is scarce as heck. They are really right down to the wire when they're paying for logistics and insurance and any other costs that come along. And it's generally not much of a money-making proposition unless you're really, really good at it. So because we do want to be a town that's known for its amenities and its events and things going on, we don't want to do anything to discourage that sort of activity. But we're able to be partners in that, then I'm all for it.
Ms. McElhaney?
Thank you. I saw this in, sorry, somebody just walked by. I'm not used to this. I saw this in public health and safety, and I was all for it because I have the last couple of years attended, especially the balloon rally, where it is like sardines, and if anything happened, it would be serious quickly. I have a question though about, we talked about in public health and safety, at the time, they wanted increased community service officers, and then they wanted to have more wages for mentors for the sworn police officers. My question is this, what happens after these events are over? Are those community service officers, is it just for the summer we're looking at the 60,000? And what about the mentoring? Is that just, and then as soon as the events are over, that money has all been used up and we start over next year?
Yeah, so hopefully you can hear me now. I had to find the right red button. This is Matt Barnes. I just want to clarify, there's an additional $25,000 for additional CSO budget, which would allow us to go from our normal 12 CSOs that we employ, which are primarily just utilized during the summer months. We have used them throughout this year to do some overnight parking enforcement and checking on Jefferson Street parking ramp and clearing stairwells prior to the business opening during the day. The additional money would allow us to extend that to, we're hoping to hire 20 CSOs so that we can staff all the special events and pay particular attention to the riverfront and meet the needs of the community. There's $35,000, which allow us to hire part-time police officers, which we're hoping to be retirees, who would then serve as mentors to the CSOs. So they'd be sworn officers that are armed with arrest powers, but their role would be to work with the CSOs, so supplementing what the CSOs do with sworn officers. But that funding right there pretty much gets us through the summer months and our special events, and then it would be used up at that point.
Ms. Tao, Mrs. Tao, do you hear me? Mrs. Tao?
Yes,
Okay, go ahead.
I didn't have my hand up.
Oh, I see that your hand is up, so that's the reason why I called you, sorry.
Okay, sorry, did my hand go back down?
It did now, so, okay, cool. Mrs. Rasmussen? That's okay. Mrs. Rasmussen? And,
Thank you. Yeah, okay, so my hand was up, and I just wanted to say on behalf of Public Health and Safety and Finance, in both avenues, we have asked, this is a plan for 2020 because we're already at the cusp of the event season, but we don't plan to do this way every year. We are gonna, in the 2021 budget, plan for this in advance so that we can budget for it with the normal budget process. And we're also going to have a serious conversation about allocating at least part of what the city keeps in terms of room tax. We do that for some other things like maintenance on the 400 blocks and things like that. This would certainly be eligible for that. So obviously the amounts of that money are always varying depending on what we have. Clearly tourism this year, at least early on now, is going to be impacted because of event cancellations. But we'll just have to play it by ear with room tax. But I think that this is certainly appropriate for the Finance Committee to discuss with some of those room tax allocations separate from the room tax commission allocation. So I just wanted to put out there that you won't see a request like this coming from these two committees every year because we want to plan well in advance, starting with the 2021 budget that would begin in July. Thank you.
thank you. Did anybody else want to speak? Just want to make sure.
Mayor, this is Matt Barnes again.
Go ahead,
Just
sir.
a couple of quick points that have really changed in the last couple weeks. When I did speak with representatives of Wausau area events today, and they discussed canceling the first 3 Wednesday night concerts, which has an impact on this funding, as well as an expectation that even if all our special events were to go as scheduled, there might be smaller attendance realized because of the COVID-19 issue. So our expectation is that some of the funds requested in the $135,000, not by a significant amount, but that we're hoping that these funds won't all be necessary. And lastly, we're committed to really tracking per event our staffing this year and coming up with an exact cost for the city for those police officers and CSOs in order for those events to occur.
All right, thank you. Anybody else have anything to add to the discussion?
Okay, I will now call the roll. Peckham,
Aye.
Martins,
Aye.
Aye.
Nutting, Neal,
Mr. Neal?
Aye.
Gisselman,
Aye.
McElhaney,
Yes.
Rasmussen,
Aye.
Lawrence, Herbst,
Aye.
Tao,
Yes.
Smith.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Moving on, excuse me, to file number 95-0617, a resolution of the Plan Commission adopting the updated Wausau River Edge Master Plan Committee action approved 5-0. The fiscal impact will be none. I'll entertain a motion to accept. Motion by Mr. Gisselman. Do I have a second?
Second. Peckham.
Thank you, Mr. Peckham.
Yes. Thank you.
Any discussion? Okay.
Okay, I will call the roll. Peckham?
Aye.
Martins?
Aye.
Nutting?
They won't be back. He's at the county.
Neal?
Aye.
Gisselman?
Aye.
McElhaney?
Yes.
Rasmussen?
Aye.
Lawrence? Herbst?
Aye.
Tao?
Yes.
Smith?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Moving on to suspend the rule. 1D, transmission of committee business to council for the items marked pending committee action. A 2/3 vote will be required. Entertain a motion to accept. Motion by Mr. Gisselman, thank you. Do I have a second? By Mr. Smith, thank you.
I will call the roll. Peckham?
Aye.
Martins?
Aye.
Neal?
Aye.
Gisselman?
Aye.
McElhaney?
Yes.
Rasmussen?
Aye.
Lawrence? Herbst?
Aye.
Tao?
Yes.
Smith?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Moving on to file number 20-0310, a resolution of the Common Council tonight approving the City of Wausau policy for employees with symptoms or exposure of novel COVID-19 flu coronavirus. Fiscal impact is none. I'll entertain a motion to accept. Motion by Mr. Smith. Do I have a second? By Ms. Lawrence. Any discussion? All right.
I will call the roll. Peckham?
Aye.
Martins?
Aye.
Neal?
Aye.
Gisselman?
Aye.
McElhaney?
Aye.
Rasmussen?
Aye.
Lawrence? Herbst?
Aye.
Tao?
Yes.
Smith?
Aye.
Motion passes.
File number 20-0317, a resolution of the Common Council tonight ratifying the emergency proclamation of the Chief Executive Officer pertaining to the COVID-19 pandemic and declaration of emergency. Fiscal impact is none at this time. I'll entertain a motion to accept. By Ms. Lawrence, thank you. Do I have a second? Mr.
I'll
Gisselman?
make the second there.
Gary beat you to it, Lisa. Be prepared for next time. So, okay, any discussion? Otherwise, we'll take roll call vote.
Peckham?
Aye.
Martins?
Aye.
Neal?
Aye.
Gisselman?
Aye.
McElhaney?
Aye.
Rasmussen?
Aye.
Lawrence? Herbst?
Aye.
Tao?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Motion passes.
File number 20-0316, a resolution of tonight's Common Council approving the agreement for the providing of workforce staffing between Wausau metro area municipalities. Fiscal impact is unknown at this time. This is in regards for the situation that's happening right now. If there's no discussion, I'll entertain a motion to accept. Motion by Mr. Gisselman, second by
I'll second.
Mrs. Rasmussen.
I got my little hand up.
Oh, go ahead, Mr. Peckham.
Thank you. The only question I had, I think this is sound planning, and I'm glad to see it. I'm wondering if there's any limit. It just says Wausau metro area municipalities. Is there a limit? If Abbotsford wants in, and Wittenberg, do they get in, or?
That'll be determined as far as, when I say surrounding communities, I'm saying around the metro Wausau region. We have good relations and been talking shared services and just what if. You know, a lot of this, there's going to be some more decisions going into it because obviously I don't want our folks getting ill and vice versa if they needed to come and help us. But this is just a boundary, if you will, as far as an agreement, just to reach out, worst-case scenario.
So Mosinee in, Mosinee out? Or everybody?
That would be
within the-
determined. Again, all the region, everything are within the region around Wausau. Rib Mountain, Schofield, Rothschild, Weston, Mosinee, Cronenwetter. Those are the areas that we're talking about.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Smith, did you have a question, sir?
Yeah, I did. I would assume these other municipalities are doing the same thing, right?
Yes, they are.
Okay, good.
It's something that we talked about actually 2 weeks ago at a shared services meeting. Myself and Mr. Lindman from the Department of Public Works was at the Village of Weston. And that topic took over because, you know, we were just kind of like discussing, well, what if this really turns into something? Well, it did. And the good news is we already kind of had this in place as far as a cooperative agreement, so as far as being good neighbors. Okay. Mrs. Rasmussen.
Thank you. I also will support this. I think just for clarity, there's an articulated plan for this in the event that any of the municipalities have an emergency situation and at the same time, workforce shortage due to illness as a result of the crisis, illness or quarantine as a result of the crisis, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Mrs. Tao.
I just wanted to throw a bone out there. It doesn't have to take a crisis like this for us to provide shared services for our surrounding partners. But I hope that we can remind some of these communities about the shared service of transit. I just wanted to be smart and throw that one out there.
Actually, that has been
Listening.
understood, Mrs. Tao. That's been mentioned numerous times and other shared services. Here's the good news. A few years ago, previous to a few years ago, we didn't have these talks. We do now. And transit is one that is brought up with mixed emotions. I will be honest about that, but at least it is discussed about. So thank you for bringing it up. No further discussion. I do have a motion and a second.
Mr. Peckham?
Aye.
Martins?
Aye.
Neal?
Aye.
Gisselman?
Aye.
McElhaney?
Yes.
Rasmussen?
Aye.
Lawrence? Herbst?
Aye.
Tao?
Yes.
Smith?
Aye.
Motion passes.
File number 20-0313, a resolution of tonight's Common Council approving the Public Works Emergency Response Mutual Aid Agreement. Fiscal impact is unknown at this time. I'll entertain a motion to accept. Motion by Mr. Gisselman. Do I have a second? By Mr. Smith? Any discussion? Otherwise, we'll move forward with the vote.
Peckham?
Aye.
Martins?
Aye.
Neal?
Aye.
Gisselman?
Yes.
McElhaney?
Aye.
Rasmussen?
Aye.
Lawrence? Herbst?
Aye.
Tao?
Yes.
Smith?
Aye.
Motion passes.
File number 20-0314, a resolution of tonight's Common Council approving Fire Department of Natural Resources Memorandum of Understanding for Mutual Aid and Fire Suppression Services. Fiscal impact is unknown at this time. I'll entertain a motion to accept. Anybody want to raise their hand? Mr. Smith, thank you. Mr. Martins? I'm sorry, you just popped up on the screen. That's the reason why I called you. Okay, like to speak? I need a second, though, first. Mr. Gisselman, thank you. Mr. Martins?
Oh, no, I didn't
Okay, I thought you had okay, that's what we had.
raise my hand. I said I made a motion.
Okay, my apologies. Like I said, the first time we're doing this. Mrs. Tao, did you want to speak? Your hand is up. It's showing here on the computer.
I didn't raise my hand. I don't know how to get rid of it.
Okay, just click it. There you go. You're doing good. Hey, like I said, it's part of the adventure of working together, so there we go. We're doing fine. Okay, no discussion. We'll move forward with the vote.
Peckham,
Aye.
Martins,
Aye.
Neal,
Aye.
Gisselman,
Yes.
McElhaney,
Yes.
Rasmussen,
Aye.
Lawrence, Herbst,
Aye.
Tao,
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Motion passes.
And file number 03-0306, a resolution of the Finance Committee authorizing the write-off of certain uncollectible delinquent personal property tax accounts from the city's accounting records. Fiscal impact will be $5,348.34. I'll entertain a motion to accept. Motion by Ms. Lawrence,
Second by Neil.
second by Mr. Neal. Thank you. Any discussion? Okay, we'll take the roll call vote.
Peckham,
Aye.
Martins,
Aye.
Neal,
Aye.
Gisselman,
Yes.
McElhaney,
Yes.
Rasmussen,
Aye.
Lawrence, Herbst,
Aye.
Tao,
Yes.
Smith.
Aye.
Motion passes.
And with that, we got through it. I'll take a motion to adjourn. Motion by Mr. Smith.
A second.
There is public comment on the agenda. There is nobody from the public here to speak, hence the reason why I did not call it, and like I said, tonight was the first time, so I thank you all for your patience, and we will get through this, everybody. We're all in this together. I still need a second, though. Second by Mr. Gisselman.
Peckham,
Aye.
Martins,
Aye.
Nutting, Neal,
Aye.
Gisselman,
Yes.
McElhaney,
Yes.
Rasmussen,
Aye.
Lawrence, Herbst,
Aye.
Tao,
Yes.
Smith.
Aye.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great night.
Wish you all well.